So we have an article by Susan Millian, senior politics writer at U.S. News. Biden talks policy while Washington plays politics. In his first public trip as president, Biden traveled to Wisconsin to discuss the pandemic, policing, and education, while many in Washington remain focused on his predecessor. First and foremost, the lack of use of the Oxford comma in that segment frustrates me to no end.
Yeah, as a writer as well, that kind of annoys me. I was like, what?
Senior politics writer at
my butt.
Oxford comma. Use it, please. All right. In a more serious note, continuing though, Joe Biden is trying very hard to be president, while much of the rest of the political class is still fighting the race he already won. In his first such event of his presidency, Biden took questions at a network town hall Tuesday night and went full-on policy nerd and grandpa-in-chief, fielding questions on everything from getting a vaccine to not defunding the police to when and how to reopen schools. He rejected the idea of defunding the police, saying more money needed to be spent to have better community policing, including making sure people of color were not presumed to be criminals. He said public defenders should be paid the same as prosecutors and talked about quashing prosecutorial discretion that leads to low-income black people getting talked into pleas because they can't afford good representation.
Okay, I'm going to butt in here.
Yeah, that's the first big issue here.
First of all, this was a big thing that this was one of his big flip-flops during the campaign, because he went from one day being like, yeah, we need to reallocate money to other things, to, no, we need police. And that was because they said his polls were dropping. I also find this a little comical, because he was the one who authored and helped pass the 94 crime bill that literally did everything that he says he wants to fight now.
Now, I will say I'm glad that he wound up on the with the decision of not wanting to defund the police. I think overall that's that he's taking this in I guess the direction that I would hope that he would take it in.
Absolutely.
I think the whole talk of defunding the police is kind of ridiculous. More funding, more resources will make it easier for the police to be able to deal with the things that they maybe don't deal with properly now.
Yeah, and we see this in Minneapolis, because if you just saw, I think they took $4 million away from their budget last year, but now they dumped $9.4 million into their budget to hire more cops, because crime has skyrocketed since their defunding efforts started. So I think that's kind of ironic. Also,
right, I saw an article the other day where they're planning to spend something like $6.4 million to recruit more police officers after they let a lot go.
Well, they quit. They didn't want to be there. But like this Grandpa in Chief line, I'm sorry, I don't like that.
I think that's the inner Susan Milligan's bias coming out. We can tell pretty easily what her opinion on Biden is.
Well, this goes back to what you and I talked about earlier about this whole like people saying the article talking about him having the fire and going to bed at 7:00. I don't want my president to be a grandpa. I want my president to be someone who's on the clock 24/7.
Right.
Like, you saying Grandpa in Chief is like, is that supposed to make me feel comfortable? I wouldn't trust either of my grandpas as Commander in Chief.
Honestly, I would trust one of mine, but not right now.
Well, your grandpas are probably much more spry than mine. I have one grandpa whose knees are
this one is. He is 80, though.
I have one grandpa whose knees are glass, and then I have another grandpa who's 6 feet under.
Yeah, I've got one who's 6 feet under and one who is more in shape than I am. So there is that.
Okay, before we continue this, you need to get your life together if your grandpa's in better shape than you.
No, the man like bike rides every day. He's crazy in shape for an 80-year-old.
Respect.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep
going.
But
continuing with this article, he said all Americans will have access to a vaccine for COVID-19 by the end of July, though he cautioned at the CNN town hall that those vaccines might not be in everyone's arms by that date, and said K through 8 schools could be largely reopened in the end of his first 100 days. So
well, that's coming. That's coming.
that seems a little optimistic. I mean, I think at this point it's possible, but it does seem optimistic to me.
Well, the other thing is, with stuff like this with President Biden, is there's just so much miscommunication, because you had the CDC the other day saying schools can reopen right now with no problems, but then the White House said, no, that was just a personal opinion. That's not really happening. And then you had Fauci be like, no, they could open just right. And then he had to retract that the next day, which you want to talk about in-chief names? We should call Fauci retractor-in-chief, because the poor guy, I don't know what is happening to him, but it changes every other day. But this is where, from my point of view and the conservative side, the moderate, because again, I'm a moderate. I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but there's so much indecisiveness with every move, and the schools one is just the biggest I see right now, because it's like, can we open or can we not? Well, at the end of the 100 days, probably.
Yeah, and I think the idea is that everyone wants the schools reopened as soon as possible, but recognizes that that we don't know for sure when that's going to be a reasonable thing to have happen.
True. Well, if you look at places like Florida that have completely just reopened and they're like, screw it, as long as they're just following the mandates and everything, I think they have, only 28,000 dead now? Like, that's not bad.
But if I'm being honest, Florida is one of the last states I would trust when looking at their response to anything COVID-related.
Well, you know what? I would usually agree with you, but they're flourishing. They are, I think, the most prosperous state right now. Their economy's booming. Their numbers are going down drastically. If I'm comparing Florida to New York or California, I'm gonna have to pick Florida 90% of the time. Like, people are calling for Andrew Cuomo's impeachment, and Gavin Newsom is about to be the 5th governor of California recalled. I'm not saying Ron DeSantis is great. I'm just saying, if you're looking at public opinion.
So
let's keep going.
This next paragraph's a little morbid. When a second grader asked if she might get the coronavirus and die, Biden, full of honeys and other terms of endearment for the girl, assured her she was much less likely to get the virus because of her age. "I wouldn't worry about it, baby. I promise you," Biden said. "Don't be scared, honey. You're going to be fine."
That's kind of creepy. That's kind of creepy.
Weird, but whatever. In many ways...
I'm hearing him say it in my head. I said I'm hearing him say it in my head, and I'm like, he definitely wasn't, like, grandpa-ish about it. He was definitely, like, trying to sound cool.
He was probably trying to sound grandpa-ish about it.
But it came out really weird, probably.
So, in many ways, the event was a studied opposite of the sorts of events held by Biden's predecessor, Donald Trump. While the former president reveled in firing up a crowd, Biden spent the hour chatting in calming tones to the audience in Milwaukee, where he made his first domestic trip as president. He offered to stay afterwards to help a woman who was seeking a vaccine for her medically vulnerable son. He asked to get the address of a small business owner so he could explain more about how his hoped for $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package would help businesses that didn't have the high finance connections of multi-million-dollar corporations.
I'm going to be honest. That first one with the Trump thing, I think that's a little unfair because most of Trump didn't do town halls. Trump did rallies.
Right. Well, I mean, that in itself speaks to the difference in their demeanor. Trump did rallies. Well, Biden's doing a town hall. That that is just Trump liking to fire up crowds. So he would much rather
True.
do a rally if he wants to fire up a crowd.
True, and also, I feel discussing this 1.9 trillion thing, if you just say 1.9 trillion and relief, people are going to be like, yes, yes, yes. If you actually look at what's in that relief package, no. Like, again, this is the Washingtonian in me. Too much of this money is going outside America. It's like, we really need to take care of our own right now, especially states that have been crippled because of this virus.
Yeah, although I do think that it would be hard to get something that is like solely relief for the people to pass without also putting relief out for corporations. While I would agree that it might be better to get it out to the people, I don't know how like politically feasible that is.
Well, this goes back to that these people, even in crisis, are looking out for themselves usually, because that's what it is, and that's what's the disgusting part of it. I'm talking about you, Mitch. Talking about you, Turtle Man.
Biden would not promise when the nation would be back to normal, but said Christmas 2021 would be much different than last Christmas. It matters whether you continue to wear that mask, as well as socially distance and wash hands with hot water, Biden said, talking like a grandparent or school nurse instructing kids. It matters. A young woman asked about crippling college debt and proposed forgiving the first $50,000 in debt, asking Biden how he could make that happen. I will not make that happen, Biden said. He went on about different circumstances, such as whether someone attends private or public school or does certain kinds of work to earn debt forgiveness. Community college should be free, Biden said, earning applause from the small, socially distant crowd.
I'm sorry, I'm just sitting here laughing because I know exactly how Biden said that, because he's like, well, I will not make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, the idea to me seems a bit ridiculous. I mean, I'm open to the idea of canceling student debt, but anything that I've seen about it hasn't convinced me that it
needs to be
like
a right
an important
plan.
thing. Yeah. Like the problem isn't that people are taking on debt. The problem is that college is too expensive. So the community college should be free.
I agree with that personally.
I agree with that. Yeah, that is a good idea.
State.
Canceling student debt, though, people who take on, I myself have taken on a good deal of student debt.
That paid off.
And while I would love for my student debt to get canceled, I don't necessarily think if that's something that like other people, like the tax dollars, should pay for. Like I agreed to the terms that I agreed to the terms of paying the money that I'm paying.
Well, and you know, the other issue with this is I feel a lot of these people here cancel student debt, and they think that means all debt, but when they say cancel student debt, they only mean government.
Right,
the federal
loans. The federal loans.
The Pell grants and stuff. They're not talking about, like, private companies that give student debt.
That's complete, like,
and those...
I don't even know if they have legal authority to cancel
They don't.
that.
And the thing is, those are the ones that are crippling people, because they're the ones with the big, like, what's it called? Oh my god.
They're not subsidized
yeah.
So, like,
they're not charging interest, the federal loans, as bad.
Right.
Whereas the private ones are the ones. So, canceling student debt, everyone hears that and goes, yes, yes, yes. They're only talking about the federal loans. The kids are thinking they mean all loans, but the government says, oh, we'll cancel the federal loans. But that's not where the majority of the loans are coming from.
Yeah, but all in all, I have to say, it's his opinion on that seems to match pretty closely to mine. Community college being free would be great, and massive loan canceling isn't a thing that is gonna happen.
it's not feasible, especially with all these other programs they're discussing. Especially the $15 thing, that's already, like we talked earlier, that's already in discussions that they're probably not going to do it because it's not feasible. Especially right now.
But while Biden tries to get lawmakers focused on critical issues at hand, dealing with the pandemic and ensuing dealing with the pandemic and ensuing financial fallout, Congress and party leaders around the country are still in a bitter fight. Having failed to get the supermajority of 67 votes in the Senate to convict Donald Trump, Democrats and their allies are not letting the matter go. Rep. Benny Thompson, Mississippi Democrat, filed the lawsuit in federal court on Tuesday, accusing Trump of conspiring with his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, as well as white supremacist groups the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers of conspiring to incite a riot at the Capitol.
I think that's ridiculous.
I mean, I'm not super knowledgeable on the Proud Boys, but are they a white supremacist group specifically?
They're the chairman of the Proud Boys is a Cuban African, Afro-Cuban.
Yeah,
the chairman.
My impression was that they were very conservative and maybe lean towards the what's it? Like lean towards certain problematic views. But my understanding was that white supremacist wasn't one of them.
No, and even the same thing with the Oath Keepers. The Oath Keepers are just people who believe you need to literally follow the Constitution. I also think to say Trump and Rudy said, go storm the Capitol, the issue with his case is if it goes to court, and if you actually watch the impeachment, Michael Vanderdeer destroyed any case saying Trump did anything to cause the riot. Because if you actually look at how the votes went in the Senate, they were completely partisanly based. But
right.
There's literally no evidence that Trump was conspiring. Benny, in his actual case, made it out like Trump and Giuliani were in the war room being like, oh, we'll send these guys this way. The Oath Keepers will take the left flank. The Proud Boys will take the right. That's not what happened. Honestly, the Proud Boys were actually told not to show up at the Capitol. And we see this thing with John Sullivan, this Insurgents USA guy who got arrested. It wasn't just Trump supporters there. It was just chaos. It was anarchists, and they were the ones that got in. Everyone was crazy. To compare what happened to the Capitol to 9/11 too is insane. The only people killed were the Trump supporters, as we just found out that Officer Sicknick actually died of a unrelated stroke later that day. So, this case, in my eyes, really holds no weight.
Well,
and I think they need to stop
the article
Trump
goes
war.
on to say, the lawsuit accuses the group of violating the 1871 Ku Klux Klan Act by using threats and intimidation to prevent members of Congress from exercising their duties. The NAACP filed the lawsuit on Thompson's behalf, and several other lawmakers are expected to join as plaintiffs. Now, I don't know what the Ku Klux Klan Act actually does.
It was actually Ulysses S. Grant passed the legislation.
So it says, using threats and intimidation to prevent members of Congress from exercising their duties. They might have a case on that one, actually.
Well, but the thing is, you need to prove intent. They need to prove Trump and Giuliani did this. That's fair. So that's why.
Oh, right, because, hold on. So the lawsuit's being filed against
Trump and Giuliani.
Okay, yeah, I see. So that'll be a hard case to prove then.
And also,
the Ku Klux... obviously this, I feel like this obviously happened where like members of Congress were prevented from exercising their duties through intimidation. But whether, like, I would argue that this could be Donald Trump's fault, but I don't know how easy it would be to prove his intent on that. So that's gonna be a messy case.
Do I think what was being said definitely inflamed people? Absolutely. But I could also go as far to say being locked up in their houses for 8 months inflamed people. I could say feeling like they were wronged inflamed people. And
right. So you might be able to prove
first of all,
you could probably prove the action, but maybe not the I don't know if this is the term mens rea.
Yeah.
The guilty mind.
My thing is to compare this to the Ku Klux Klan Act. The Ku Klux Klan Act was actually, Grant made that a law because of African American senators and congressmen getting attacked and killed. That's not what happened. What happened was literally just the pot boiled over and everyone snapped. And
yeah, but
if you look at video,
like you could clearly call it intimidation, and
absolutely.
That probably falls under the Ku Klux Klan Act, even if it's less of an issue than what was happening that caused the Ku Klux Klan Act to get passed. It's definitely something that would be violating it.
I
agree, just a matter of are Trump and Giuliani going to be able to be legally responsible for it? We'll see. That's going to be.
Like, you need to prove there was an intent. That's what you need to do, is you need to prove there was an intent from Trump and Giuliani to do it. And as shown during the impeachment trial, there was zero intent for what happened. And that's why, and it's annoying because this is literally, I understand what happened was bad, and it definitely needs justice for what happened. But at the same time, we have a new president. We have a new Congress. Start fulfilling the promises you gave to your constituents and stop milking this Trump truck for what you can get out of it. That's the way I'm seeing it. I think the people who stormed the Capitol all should be in prison. But we need to move forward and actually start helping people.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, the GOP enmeshed in its own civil war. Two of the 7 Senate Republicans who voted to convict Trump, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana and Richard Burr of North Carolina, have been censored by their state parties for their votes. Censure proceedings are underway for Senator Ben Sass?
Sass. That's how you do it.
Of Nebraska, Senator Suzanne Collins of Maine, and Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania. We did not send him there to vote his conscience. We did not send him there to do the right thing, or whatever he's doing, David Ball, chairman of the Washington County, Pennsylvania Republican Party, said of Toomey. Hold on, isn't his duty to vote how he thinks? Like, was he representing the state in that vote, or
yes?
Okay.
Well, that's the issue with the Senate. So the 17th Amendment was passed because Republicans thought they would pretty much always control the Senate and the popular vote, but that was also during the Taft-Roosevelt era, so things got messed up. But the way it was supposed to be was the Senate was supposed to represent the state, and the House was supposed to represent the specific constituents. So
right.
He's
so
not
I guess
totally wrong.
The problem that I guess they're having with their vote is that they think that their state, I guess, would disagree with how they voted.
Well, yeah. So if the whole with Toomey, if he gets censured from the state, then that's them saying that's not how we wanted you to vote. Because the thing is, the Senate's not supposed to vote on personal beliefs. They're supposed to vote how the state votes. So that's the issue. And that's why the 17th Amendment, because originally the U.S. Senate, the 2 representatives were picked by the state assembly. But the 17th Amendment took that power away from the states. So that's the issue. And that's why I think they should amend the Constitution and get rid of that. Because that's been causing more problems than good.
The impact of the knuckle rapping is questionable. Toomey and Burr are retiring, while Cassidy, Collins, and Sass just won re-election to 6-year terms. But the censors show the influence Trump still has over his party even after his loss to Biden. Trump lashed out Tuesday against Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, blasting the Kentucky Republican for suggesting very strongly that Trump could or even should face criminal penalties for his role in the deadly riot.
Yeah,
Mitch
this is
quote.
This is, before you said this is crazy because McConnell acquitted. He voted for acquittal.
McConnell was one of the Trump's most avid supporters in the Senate when Trump was still in office.
Yeah,
Trump's
bizarre.
out, and then McConnell's like, "Oh, he could and should be indicted for this."
Well, he's one of these.
Oh, nice flip flop, McConnell.
He's a careerist.
Yeah, you.
I expect
turtle.
nothing less. you freaking turtle. I expect nothing less from Mitch McConnell.
Quote, Mitch is a dour, sullen, and unsmiling political hack, and if Republican senators are going to stay with him, they will not win again. Now, that is a quote from Trump, and I'd just like to second that.
I don't know many conservatives that actually like Mitch McConnell anymore.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, Mitch McConnell is only in his seat because Trump endorsed him. Because his election was super close. I think Donald Trump Jr. said he was gonna, even if it's a Democrat going against McConnell next time, they're gonna endorse the Democrat. I was like... I think that's the other big thing about this impeachment that they messed up is, Trump is going to be a strong figure in the Republican Party for a while. So, they either have to realize that, or they have to realize that they probably should start thinking about other sides. Personally, I think that's stupid, but that's how it is right now.
So Trump said it... Trump said when it was necessary and appropriate, he would bring back primary rivals to officials who were not in his favor. The threat, coming from a man who won a single election in a rant against a long-term party leader who won his first election in 1977 and every election since, is of questionable power. I mean, let's be real though, the man was president, and people really don't like Mitch McConnell right now. So, questionable power, maybe not. Honestly, I would not be surprised if Mitch McConnell gets,
this is
doesn't get reelected.
From Miss Milligan, President Biden's lover, who is, she's gonna be a Lincoln, Project sider too, which, the Lincoln Project's facing their own problems right now, so. McConnell's trying to ride the wave, but he's riding into the wave and not with it.
McConnell eagerly advanced the parts of Trump's agenda that Republicans wanted, such as a massive tax cut and confirmation of conservative judges, but he was never among the Senate's ardent Trump loyalists, and after the Senate voted to acquit the former president, McConnell laid into him, saying the attackers did this because they had been fed wild falsehoods by the most powerful man on earth, because he was angry he'd lost an election. Biden, while lured into opportunities to castigate Trump, sought to change the topic, calling Trump, who commonly discussed himself in the third person, the former guy or the previous president. For 4 years, all that's been in the news is Trump, Biden said when asked about remarks House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, California Democrat, made about senators who voted to acquit Trump. For the next 4 years, Biden said, the conversation should be about the American people. I'm tired of talking about Trump, he said. And that's good. That's a good sentiment. I agree with that.
But I agree with that too, but the issue is Nancy Pelosi won't drop it. Because,
right.
Like we said earlier...
At least it'll take a little while for her, I think.
Yeah, they need a boogeyman. And right now, other than Trump, who could be their boogeyman?
all in all, Biden seems, in my opinion, doing an okay job domestically. This is to ignore all the foreign policy issues we were talking about earlier. I don't have much of a problem with what was discussed in this article about his proceedings there.
I just still love the, well, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, well, that's not gonna happen.
I picture him saying it. I'm like,
oh
no,
I'm sorry. I will not make that happen.
He's like, oh, that's not happening. My issue.
But yeah,
I there's a lot here I agree with. I agree with the free community college. I agree with ending this freaking Trump insanity. It's like, first of all, they never gave Trump a chance, and I think we can agree on that. But
yeah, I would argue that Trump maybe didn't deserve a chance, but they definitely didn't give him one.
Yeah, and he did do good things, like the Abraham Accords, the tax cuts. He did do very good things. But something that really makes me angry is this quote from McConnell. Did this because they had fed wild falsehoods from the most powerful man because he was angry he'd lost an election? I'm sorry, I don't want to sound like one of these other Republicans, but what was the first 3 years of the Trump administration but people like Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden himself saying it was a stolen election, the Russians stole the election? Like, isn't this very hypocritical?
Mitch McConnell, I think we've established, is one of the most hypocritical people on planet Earth.
Yeah, but I agree, but then you have people like Benny Thompson who are trying to bring this to trial, and it's like, you literally did the same thing. It's just, and they did riot. You and me watched Trump's inauguration. Remember?
Yep.
They said the Washington police did a Game of Thrones phalanx.
Yeah. I will say there are stark differences that merit different responses. But like there are similar themes for sure.
Yeah, and I'm very upset because a lot of the things like this Keystone Pipeline thing that took away jobs. We were promised these green jobs. Jen Psaki's been very combative with people asking that question. This winter vortex, like I told you before, in Texas and everything, this is like Trump's revenge. He shut down that pipeline and this thing came in out of nowhere. It was as if, like, nature was like, haha, gotcha. It just, I feel we need to stop with this freaking, and I agree with Biden on that, we need to stop with this Trump, but also, President Biden, you really need to start making some answers for things you're doing. Where is our $2,000 checks we were promised? Where is these jobs we were promised? Where are all these things that you said you were going to do in the first 100 days, and we're not seeing it probably going to happen for the first 365 days?
Well, I'll say time will tell on that, and we'll be able to we'll be able to talk about that in later I guess episodes. Is that what we're calling this?
I guess
later talks.
We'll
be able to talk about it. Biggest takeaway.
I think we need accountability.
Oh yeah. Biggest takeaway from this is honestly Biden's reaction to what's going on in China is a disaster. And the rest of what's going on with Biden seems to be pretty bog standard of what we expected.
Do you say bog standard?
I did say that.
That's hysterical. We're like 20-year-olds talking like 80-year-olds.
Oh man.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things we've been seeing with Biden, though, like in this article, it's a town hall, so he's going to say a lot. Policy making. The question is, will he actually accomplish what he say he's going to do? And
we shall see.
Time will tell. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for joining us. And I guess
see you
that's
next
about
time.
it.